One man can change the world with a bullet in the right place.
Welcome to the New to Pew Podcast. I think I'm used to saying that, number one. I am known as Max Fallis, the new kid on the Glock. I'm here with my grumpy old man who knows a lot more than he looks. The Bag Man himself, BlackBagResources. Thank you for indulging this wild concept of a show. Let's just click that and get that out the way. Bag Man.
It's a thing. You know, we've done this a couple of times. I've done a couple of podcasts before. You're basically leveraging me out of retirement as far as podcasting goes to get me to start doing this stuff again. But I figure I owe you a favor at this point. So I'm in.
Well,
I'm in.
We made it a point to have interesting conversations off the air during our usual drives to work or home. So the idea came about being that I am new to the whole firearms world. Let's take my education and make it public so people can literally have the simplest and sometimes even stupid questions answered without having to ask them themselves. So that's kind of the concept of new to Pew, i.e. I'm new to this whole firearms ownership world, and you hire a grumpy old seasoned veteran to guide you away. You're definitely the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the show. I'm just a young Luke. Hopefully you won't leave in episode 4 like Obi-Wan did. So
nice.
Yeah. I also had a shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a man with a firearms ID as another tagline for the show. If people may not get that reference, but it's actually the opening line to Knight Rider, the old TV show.
Yeah, which is funny because I think the last thing I just sent you was some goofy video with like Knight Rider music over it.
Perfect. I may have to throw that in.
Serendipity.
So, if
sure.
You know,
so just be used to 80s references and all that foolishness. Like expect that in this show.
Yep.
In this podcast, in this program. What is this? I've been doing this for years, and I still want to call it a show.
It's a show. It'll definitely be a show. We are putting on a show. I'll just say it like that. We're going to inform and entertain at the same time. That's the goal. Sometimes the ratio may be off, but at the end of the day, hopefully somebody will learn something that they didn't know. So there's our 3-minute intro. Let's move to the topic because, we'll babble on and start talking about toys if we don't. This is episode 1 titled Pulling the Trigger. So this is like how you would get into the world of firearms ownership and specifically the different processes as defined by local governing bodies, aka your state, because firearm ownership laws and rules vary from state to state, correct?
Right. Yes. And there's federal laws on top of that. There's roughly, I want to say 24,000 gun laws in this country. Wow. So everything from how to get a gun to where you can carry a gun or not carry a gun. And you've got some city ordinances thrown in the mix too. So,
wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of pitfalls for people that I don't think they realize.
So the first thing to do, obviously, is to go on your state's website, whatever your state is, .gov, and there's probably a section about purchase or acquiring Now, I live in Jersey, so is the firearms ID a different thing in different states?
Yeah, in some states it doesn't exist. That's part of why I left New Jersey and moved to Pennsylvania. I don't have to have that in Pennsylvania at all. It doesn't exist. And that's partly because we're a Commonwealth with our own state constitution. So it's a slightly different set of rules.
Okay.
But yeah, no firearms ID card required. In New Jersey, the starting point is the New Jersey State Police website, and you're going to find your firearms ID card application there.
Gotcha. One of the things I came to realize after the fact was my town, which I'm not going to name, is slightly different than what's listed on the New Jersey State website. I have to go to my town first, because on the state website it says go to this website, fill out this paperwork, yada yada yada. But my town regulates before you even do all it. Well, when you put the paperwork in, the process doesn't start until you go to my town's PD and pay the processing fee that most people were paying when they picked up their firearms ID. So I think our recommendation is definitely look at your town and look at your state regulations and rules and how they want you to do it, because it may differ from town to town, which was something I found out later on down the road when
the hard way,
constantly complaining about a delay, like what the hell, what's going on, and come to find out I had to go to the police department and pay first, whereas friends of mine that started the process the same time I did, they paid when they picked it up. So your town may be a little bit different. Definitely do the research, which I'm sure we'll be saying a lot in this show because we are a show. Ha.
So this is all new since I left New Jersey. But the other thing I heard was that sometimes you have to go to your local PD to get a specific number to input on the form on the state police website.
Yeah,
to get that to process too. So that's a whole nother thing.
You can look that number up because I had to do too. And that number was listed on my town's website under their FAQ. So, again, go to your town's website, see how they want you to do it, and compare it to the state. You may be lucky enough to live in PA and not have to go through all these hoops to do it, or you may live someplace with. So, let me ask you, this is going to sound strange.
Let's take it.
Good.
Let's take it back a step, because this is one I want to ask you, right? As somebody who's new coming into this, I think before all that, there's a thought process to, hey, you know what? I think I need a gun.
Right.
And a lot of people don't get to that point. They just don't see a need for it. They don't see a desire for it. What was it that made you think, you know what? I think now's the time. I'm going to start on this process and dive into this hobby, activity, world, whatever you want to call it.
For me,
what got you?
There was a combination of things going on. One, just for some context, the Bag Man and I used to play paintball together. So, I had members of my paintball team who were already in the firearms world, and I'd go shooting with them. And my first concerns with firearms as a whole, as somebody who wasn't exposed to them, as soon as I went out with my friends at a range day, a lot of that was satisfied. So a lot of the fear and stigma kind of went away. And then I started to look into the sport of competitive shooting, because it's looked interesting. You see, I think the catalyst, now that I'm thinking about it, was seeing the Keanu Reeves training video of him training for John Wick. And he's literally going from target to target, changing guns. And that kind of clicked the switch, oh, shit, I'd like to be able to do that. I'm 45
right, the stuff
years
coming out of Terran Tactical.
Yeah, I need a new hobby. I got a lot of spare time and, disposable income. So let me take on a new hobby. And then that led to seeing competitive sports. And you put on top of it the change in things socially and a lot of the, I don't want to call it social unrest, but 2019 kind of, flipped a lot of switches for people. So the combination of all of that, me being a family man and other issues that, I've talked about on the other show with my childhood growing up in the inner city and all of that, protection is a very important thing in my life. It's part of what I do for a living. So having all of these factors kind of mixed into one bowl that is 2019, it was time to pull the trigger. Insert laugh track. The also too, nice. Just conversations with you and seeing how you were able to explain things in a simple enough way that a non-firearms guy can understand what you're talking about. opened up a lot of doors in the mind of like, oh, okay, so then this is really that, and then this breaks down into that, and my interest in it mechanically also was another like, oh shit, like most people don't understand how a firearm works. I was one of them until you sat down and literally built my rifle in front of me to like, oh, like it's literally watching a guy build a car. It was fascinating to me. I was the kid that was taking apart his bike and then put it all back together just so I can learn how things worked. I like systems. So all of this just perfect storm of events, and here I am.
Well, give yourself some credit too, because I put it together and then took it apart and made you do it again so that you would have a full understanding of it. Like demonstrating the skill is one thing, but doing it yourself is another. So
yeah,
it's all you, buddy.
Well, you mean you taught it to me, so yeah. And not to toot my own horn, but I totally don't remember half the names of shit, which is why you gave me a cool mat with every little piece individually itemized. So that's how my mind works visually. I can put something together by looking at the final product, and I know this piece is supposed to be over here. And just to wrap up your question, that perfect storm of events led me to where I am now as a FID holder in New Jersey. Yeah.
And novice shooter.
Yep. I don't even know if I've earned the novice title yet. There's one step below novice. That's where I'm at. I'm new to Pew.
No, you're definitely.
I'm just gonna keep throwing these jokes in there. It's part of my job.
Keep it on brand, Max. Yeah. Keep it on brand.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, but you figured things out pretty quick, and with a little bit of guidance along the way, I think you've done quite well for yourself initially. Mm-hmm. Now that the world is reopening and I can start teaching classes again, we'll probably start doing more in the next couple of weeks or whatever. And there's a lot changing in the world right now that may encourage you to do even more, but we'll talk about that on another show.
Yeah.
For now, this is those initial first steps into firearms ownership, I guess. So, if you live in a state where it's the firearms ID card, you're going to have to go through that process. But at least for New Jersey, you're limited to rifles and shotguns with that. So if you want a handgun, huzzah, you get to pay another fee for another type of license called a pistol purchase permit. And that is either a checkbox on that same application or another application to get that permit.
Separate application.
The difference being that your firearms.
Yeah.
For you, it was a separate one.
Yep.
Okay. It used to be just a checkbox where you could apply for your initial FID card and also a pistol purchase permit, and you could put in how many you needed and all that stuff. The other thing is where the FID is, I'll call it semi-permanent. You have to get it updated if you move because it is attached to your address. Your firearms or your pistol purchase permit is a one and done. So that's one where you're going to use that, buy the handgun. They're going to take a copy. They're going to keep a copy. Let you keep a copy and then send a copy wherever it goes to state police or whoever. And then that permit is done. It also expires after 90 days with a single 90-day extension. So that permit only lasts 180 days at max. And you are also limited in New Jersey to one gun a month regarding handguns. So I think they break it down to every 30 days too. So it's not just within a calendar month. You can't buy one on the last day of the month and then buy one on the first day of the following month. It has to be a 30-day gap in between.
Really? When I signed up for mine, a friend who was already in the know said, request 3 permits, 3 handgun permits. So when you buy one, permit number 2 becomes valid because you've already used permit number 1. So now you have a new window of time if you do want to make a second handgun purchase. So that was kind of like I don't want to say beating the system, but that was like a suggestion to do that. After buying the first one, like I don't know why I would want another handgun so quickly, but
I don't, my understanding is that's not how that works. It's from the date the permit is issued, you have 90 days. Okay. So that you burn your first permit on your first handgun, you have to wait another 30 days to use the second one, which means unless you're really careful about making sure you hit those milestones and burn those permits, some of them could expire on you.
They can also expire if they're sitting on somebody's desk, which was something that happened to a coworker of mine. Also,
yeah, that's not an uncommon thing either.
It's funny you mentioned the firearms ID being linked to your residence. I have another friend who got divorced, and there's a delay on switching his address on his firearms ID. He's no longer living in that home, and he told me that he moved in with his sister for a while, and his sister's town declined it, if that's even possible. Like, he's having an issue with it. And then now that he has his own place, he moved out of his sister's place, he's now starting the process again just to change his address. Like, does that go into the same pile as the new applicants? Or is this a common thing, this delay of just literally changing the address?
So that would be a question for somebody who actually works in the department that handles that. I couldn't tell you what goes on behind that curtain.
Okay.
But it is fairly common. So you've got organizations like the Association of New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Clubs, which is your state arm of the National Rifle Association. But a state-based organization has their permit strike team. And if your permits are being delayed and you feel it's unjust, you can reach out to them at anjrpc.com, and they will help you expedite that process. Because the other part of it is you put in that application, you do your fingerprints, if they're required, you do your references, and your references are all done online. So for example, I would get an email as one of your references and then have a form to fill out and send it back. It's all done digitally. It's much more streamlined than it used to be.
Yeah.
Once all that's done, they have 30 days to either issue or deny that permit. So from my understanding in the statute, I would have to pull it up and confirm that, but it's supposed to be done in a timely fashion.
Even for change of address?
Have cases. Even
for a change of address, you have to go through that whole process again?
Pretty much. It's the same form with just a checkbox. It's either original application or reissue. So that's a reissue, but you're still doing the whole thing all over again.
Wow.
Which is so part of what I feel is the problem with all this is it becomes a very onerous process, in that it's a lot of steps. It's a big pain in the butt. And personally, I think it's by design difficult to discourage people from exercising their civil right. I mean, it's like a reading test at the polls. It's just inconvenient and harassment, and that's the long and short of it. And I don't know that it's done anything to prevent crime or anything else, but yeah.
It reminds me of the retro fitness business model. Well, they'll have you sign up for like $5 a month, and they're betting on you forgetting about that gym membership while they keep billing
and just not coming.
And not coming, exactly. So
Correct.
After 15 days of leaving messages on people's voicemails and getting the runaround, I wonder how many people just bail on it, versus seeing it through and having to be basically harassing.
And I know plenty of people who got rid of their guns before moving to New Jersey that had firearms in other states, and they came here and knew it was such a process that they couldn't bring their stuff because of additional regulations in the state, and decided it just wasn't worth the time and aggravation to go through the process. And they love adding to the process, right? If at any opportunity, the current governor and legislators in New Jersey will add steps to that process if they can.
Simply just
and compare this to. So here's the other thing I always think is funny is you hear people say, "Oh, you can buy a gun without a background check." And I'm like, well, good luck. I mean, unless you're really buying a gun out of a trunk of a car on the street and deeply felonious territory at that point, you're not going to buy a gun from a gun shop without a background check. And in New Jersey in particular, you got a background check to get your firearms ID card. You got a background check to get your pistol purchase permit. And then when you go to the gun shop to buy the actual firearm, guess what they do?
Another background check.
Another instant background check. So realistically, in New Jersey, you've had 3 background checks to get that gun.
Yeah.
Not just one. You know.
So is there? Okay,
so it's
the big fear campaign is like, you hear this a lot. You could just walk into a store and buy a gun. So clearly not in New Jersey. Is there a
No.
place in America where that is actually as easy as it sounds?
No. Most places, from what I understand, so like in Pennsylvania, I have to show my driver's license. It's really all I need to buy a firearm, but I'm still going to fill out a federal 4473, which is the form that has all the information about, you know, the 20 questions or so that ask you if you're a felon, if you're drug addicted, if you have criminal history of any kind, and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And they still run an instant background check. Right. And there's a couple of different versions of the instant check system, but they're all going to pop up with any disqualifying mental health or disqualifying criminal history. And I know people who've gotten jammed up because they were involuntarily committed as a child, never had any mental health issues as an adult, but that involuntary committal, which is called a 502, I believe, prevented them from being able to get a firearm, and they had to hire a lawyer and get that cleared up and all that stuff. So there are ways to do it, and you can have criminal history expunged, things like that. But I don't know any place that doesn't do a background check. The other way it can go is if, and I believe Ohio is an example of this, if you go through the process of getting a concealed carry permit, which also requires a background check, you can show your valid concealed carry permit at the time of purchase, and that fulfills that requirement for a background check. You already had a background check done, so they're not going to do another one at the time of sale, because you're not going to have that if you have any kind of criminal history.
Gotcha.
They're not going to give it to you. So
that sounds
different ways things can be done.
Okay. So
because from my line of thinking, right, if we do criminal background check at the time you're issued that concealed carry permit, as soon as you're brought up on any other charge that could invalidate that permit, that's going to come up, and they're going to come get that from you.
Gotcha.
Right? Law enforcement is going to make that part of the process because it's all connected in their system.
Mm-hmm. So by still having the concealed carry,
whether that means
it's like a way of saying that, yes, I'm still green in the system. You know, I can keep purchasing because nothing's been revoked.
Right. Now, whether that system functions the way it's supposed to, I can't speak to, but I think that's the line of thinking behind it. So
I had a friend.
There's a couple of different ways to do it, but yeah.
I had another friend. Again, one of the catalysts for me getting into all this was I had a bunch of friends. We all just said, "Hey, let's get into this." And so another friend.
You got a lot of friends.
I do. I got high friends in low places, as they say.
Nice.
One of us, well, he was denied his permit, and he thinks it's because his ex-wife and him went to family counseling prior to the divorce. Now, you mentioned mental health issues during the background check. Is that something that could possibly red flag you in the system? Like going to a family therapist for like the loss of a child or a traumatic situation?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I don't think so. So my question would be, was he denied a firearms ID card, or was he denied at the time of purchase?
Firearms ID card.
Okay. Then the issuing authority should be able to explain to him why he was denied.
Okay. Gotcha.
Right. They should be able to tell him, and in all reality, he should have gotten a letter in the mail that says either, this is why you were denied, and we're not charging you with a crime, or this is why you were denied, and because you knowingly falsified your application, knowing that you had this on your record, we're also charging you under the criminal code. And that can get scary fast. So you might not even know you're being denied. And then in trying to go through the application process, you catch charge on top of it.
So that falsifying information, by not putting that down on the application.
Right.
But if you put it down on the application, they can still deny it, but would they still charge you with it though? I mean, no, because it's not falsifying information if you confess to it on paper. So
correct.
Right.
But and again, I have limited experience with this because I've never had an issue and don't have any criminal history to run afoul on the application. But basically, it asks you a bunch of questions that if you answer yes to any of them, you should expect either delays or denial. Right? Do you have any felonies? Do you have any history of domestic violence? Are you a narcotics user, habitual drunkard? I'm trying to remember what the rest of them are. There's a bunch, but basically, we jokingly call it the IQ test. If you're dumb enough to answer yes to any of those, you're getting denied.
The IQ test. I like that. Okay. So let me think of some more new guy questions. I mean, as we said,
well,
good.
Just as it pertains to these initial steps in becoming a firearms owner, right? Because I know you've got a lot of questions.
Yeah,
we answer them on a fairly regular basis.
I'm trying to go in chronological order for the audience to know, because this is kind of how I'm envisioning this project as we walk toward, supreme knowledge and stuff like that. I'm just trying to think of like what other hurdles would people run into during the permitting process all the way up until you make the purchase, aside from
some states like California have a waiting period, so you can go buy the gun and then you have to wait so many days before you can actually pick it up.
Okay.
And it's the idea behind that is that if you're planning on committing a crime of passion, it gives you time to cool off. Again, it's really just a nuisance for most people, and again, does nothing really productive.
Gotcha.
So, there's a lot of layers to different state regulations when it comes to firearms ownership. There's also, and I guess it would be good to touch on for new firearms owners, you have to also look at whether or not your state has a quote unquote assault weapons ban. Because certain features may be prohibited on your firearms. So again, using California as an example, I believe they've got like a fixed magazine rule. You can't have a conspicuous pistol grip. So rifles that are sold with those features in California have to be modified in such a way that they meet those codes. Same thing in New Jersey, but a little similar thing in New Jersey. There's a whole list of guns you can't have in Jersey. And God forbid you buy a long gun out of state and bring it home, and now you're in violation of law. You can really mess yourself up too. With that said, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. No part of this program is meant to be legal advice. It's just general conversational stuff. Consult your attorney for more information.
Absolutely. We offer no factual evidence other than our experience. And even that's questionable because
a lot of our experiences we can't talk about.
Yeah.
What?
It's like Fight Club. There'll be no discussion about Fight Club. All right. Well, I think we've touched on at least everything I can think of right now for the first steps. Is there anything else you would recommend to someone considering buying a firearm or buying their first firearm?
So I think the pitfall that everybody falls into with their first firearm is they pick out a cool gun and then they want to buy a bunch of crap to bolt onto it.
Feeling really attacked right now. It's messed up.
Well, I'm not picking on you because I did it too. And I'll be honest with you, in order of importance, you need the firearm. You need a way to store the firearm securely. You need ammunition. You need spare magazines if it uses one. You need it probably came with a case, but you may want to upgrade the case at that point. If it's a handgun, get a holster. If it's a long gun, get a sling. And everything else after that is far less important. Optic maybe, and then all the tactical whiz bang BS can wait until much, much later. You don't need to change your trigger. You don't need to change the colors. You don't need to change all this other stuff and start hanging shit off the gun. You need range time. Shoot the shit out of the gun before you change anything.
That's true. I can co-sign on that.
And stop buying shit off Amazon. That's a personal attack on you.
Yeah. Right on target with that one. I had extra cash.
Thank you.
And an Amazon gift card that I got from my kids.
I had a gift card.
So, yeah, why not?
It's all right.
It looks cool.
It's part of the process, right? I have friends that can tell you about all the dumb shit I bought and stuck on my early firearms too. It's not. We don't judge.
So it's par for the course.
Just a little bit, maybe a little bit,
and nothing with the Punisher logo on them. Because I'm a comic book fan, and of course, the Punisher is one of my favorite comic book heroes. But I was informed, don't make that mistake. So let me save the listening audience a little bit of humiliation.
Yeah, you're like, but I like comic books, and I want the Punisher skull. Yeah. And I had to go full Black Panther and be like, we don't do that here.
Yeah, yeah. Just a lesson for the listening audience. Keep the Punisher stuff off of your firearms. No patches, no bags, because the veterans, the old schoolers, the grumpy old men who remember when ammo was cheap, because they'll always throw that in your face. Oh my God, you paid $1 a round. It was
back in my day.
Exactly. They'll all laugh at you for having Punisher socks on. Don't do it, ladies and gentlemen.